Welcome back to Crit and Crit, where we continue our discussion of Pygmalion and our playthrough of Mega Man X. I am Axion.
And I'm Sint.
And we are at the final level and nearing the end of our discussion of our play.
Yep. And something that has kind of stuck out to me is that, well, for a play that debuted in 1913, it's surprisingly feminist. Shaw has basically never shied away from having multiple characters call Higgins out on his mistreatment of Eliza, and, well, his mother especially is kind of wary of the entire experiment from really the moment she's made aware of it. Especially since Higgins and Pickering, being a couple of old bachelors, have not really seemed to think through too much the implications of how this could appear for someone in Eliza's position and the overall effects it could have. Mrs. Higgins, however, immediately picks up on, yeah, this is not going to look right.
So,
much like Mega Man having to keep sliding under the conveyor belt so he doesn't cuss himself.
Yeah, normally if you come to this stage earlier, it would all be lava. But since I beat Chill Penguin stage, everything is frozen over.
You have deprived Mega Man of one of the universal childhood games, you monster.
Yep. So, through Pygmalion, there are basically three main female characters. There's obviously Eliza, and then there's Mrs. Higgins and Mrs. Pearce. Mrs. Pearce is the one we were introduced to first. Ah, got it. Ah, crud. I'm gonna have to come back and do that later. You only get one shot at that once you get up there, and then if you screw it up, you have to come back and do it later. I'll do it off screen. I've done a bunch of other collecting of items and stuff off screen anyway. I will need that thing to beat the game later, though. It makes a lot of things a lot easier. Anyway, we're introduced to Mrs. Pearce basically as soon as we get to seeing Higgins in his apartment, because she is his housekeeper. And she is also the one whom he entrusts, for lack of a better word, with the caretaking of Eliza once she comes into his residence. And it's made pretty clear fairly quickly that Mrs. Pearce is not particularly entertained by the antics of the two gentlemen for whom she works. But at the same time, she's not really in a position to argue with them. She has a job to do.
Yep, and that's kind of going to be interesting here because something else we wanted to discuss, which we weren't really going to focus on for this episode, was class distinction. And this is one of those instances in which those two things are not as separate as you might think. And honestly, neither would be Mrs. Higgins' concerns about the Eliza situation. Mrs. Pearce is not in a position to argue, one, because, well, you know, behave as a lady of your station should, but is also a lady of your station. She is the employee, so she can't really affect her employer's behavior too much, even if she, had been Mr. Pearce. Is this a boss fight?
Yep.
You'd think by now I would have learned the Mega Man pattern, but, I don't. That is the ugliest elephant I've ever seen. Anyway, Mrs. Higgins is basically quick to interrupt them while they're praising themselves for all the cool things they have done with Eliza to mention, a problem. Oh, the problem of how to pass her off as a lady. No, you two infinitely stupid male creatures, the problem of what is to be done afterward. Well, I don't see anything in that. She can go her own way with all the advantages I have given her. The advantages of that poor woman who was here just now? The manners and habits that disqualify a fine lady from earning her own living without giving her a fine lady's income. Is that what you mean?
More or less.
Basically, you're going to teach her to pass herself off as a highborn lady. You know, the class that is not supposed to be working and earning a living because they inherit everything. They're not supposed to be dirtying their hands. This is the society we have. You know this, and you're taking this working class girl, actually poorer than working class, literally on the streets girl, teaching her to be a lady, and you're just going to send her back. She'll be not suitable for any class of society the way you have her.
Which
And
brings us back to something you quoted in an earlier episode, that she sold flowers at her prior employment, but did not sell herself. And now that she has been trained, she is fit to sell nothing else. Alright, let's try this thing again.
I don't think it's going to work.
I am not as good as bad as I used to be when I was a kid.
Is it absolutely necessary to beat the game?
Not really. I'm gonna get it if I do this level anyway. It's just easier to get it there.
Okay. But yeah, just and it's kind of key that Eliza mentions that because, well, I don't think that let's say if Higgins was in the same position, he would be in a similar boat because, well, there would always be the opportunity to, you know, join the army for a man who is hard up, or there's always something to be done. Women are more restricted in what is acceptable. So, it's rather telling that the first support Eliza gets is from someone completely removed from the experiment.
Yep. So then we have Mrs. Higgins, who, on top of what we've already said, I love the rockets. I do not like these turtles.
This is a Toho game, isn't it?
Not quite. I don't like the turtles because they're a pain to kill. Anyway, Mrs. Higgins. She, unlike Mrs. Pearce, is in a position where she can speak her mind about the current situation a little more freely.
Yeah, they're at her house.
That was not what I wanted to do.
Pictured Henry Higgins entering a conversation with his mother. But yes, and when she raises these concerns, like, they don't tell her she's, you know, out of line. They just
brush her off.
They look on gormlessly as though, like, you know, I don't understand what she's talking about. How is there a problem? She can go do her own thing. We'll find her some light employment. She's happy. Don't worry about her. Bye. Oh, let's go take her to see some Shakespeare. Oh, that'll be fun. And Mrs. Higgins just watches them go and is just like, I raised this. How?
And interestingly, perhaps, there's no mention of a Mr. Higgins beyond, obviously, her son. So it's probably safe to assume his father is either dead or otherwise out of the picture.
I mean, given the era, it's probably more that he's dead because divorce in this era would be a scandal.
Right.
I do find it interesting that they do go out of their way to mention that, like, Mrs. Higgins would like her son to get married, and he is not interested in the process. He's not interested at all. He says because, like, well, there's no one who can compare to his mother, which, you know, if you want to read into that, you can. There's a lot you can read into that if you want.
I was about to say, paging Dr. Freud.
Which, I don't know, I can figure... I've honestly read Higgins, honestly, as just, like, what is romance, can I eat it, sort of completely disconnected from the process, and that could have just been a polite brush off to his mom of, like, No, I have no interest in getting married. Because there's no one who could be as wonderful as you, Mother. Yeah. As, you know, I mean, having to dodge the question to kids is always something fun, you know?
Oh, hey, look, it's this guy again. Yes, run away, Mr. Purple Boba Fett. Anyway.
But yeah, Shaw has pretty staunchly been on Eliza's side the entire play, which is probably not... Oh, good job, buddy, getting captured like that. Because, like, if you recall from when we were talking about the whole shipping situation, that Shaw did not approve of Eliza and Higgins together, because, I mean, who would approve Higgins with anyone, because it's Higgins, is that he's very adamant that, like, no, Eliza is not being coy and playing hard to get. She is not at all interested in marrying him. She has thought this through, because if you're in a position, you kind of have to. But Freddie's sister is also kind of an interesting case when it comes to talking about this, because, well, she's in many ways a foil to Eliza. She comes from the upper crust background that Eliza is being taught to mimic, likewise does not have much in the way of translatable skills, despite the fact that, as the epilogue basically reveals, the Einsford Hill financial situation is not as stable as, you know, their aristocracy would typically reflect. Which might do better to talk about when we actually focus more on the whole classism, unless we just want to work the two together. Up to you, Axion.
Yep.
Yep to an or question.
Sorry, I got distracted. Say it again.
Do we want to talk about the books both together, or keep the class separate?
We'll get to it next time.
Alright. But yeah, it's when she shows up at Mrs. Higgins' place, because the Einsford Hills are friends with Mrs. Higgins, Eliza kind of starts speaking like Eliza does, because she hasn't fully trained out of those habits yet, and Clara, thinking it's trendy, starts swearing as well, which just completely humiliates Mrs. Einsford Hill, and, you know, so it's interesting there that, like, she kind of almost gets to have, like, a bit of a bonding moment with a friend, which is the first we've actually had any indication that she really has any. Which could just be that, you know, she had plenty back where she was, but Shaw does not feel the need to include them in the play because it'd just be extra characters, because, you know, that's kind of valid, but...
Well, that, and because, to be blunt, that's not really a crowd that Eliza's going to be able to spend time with anymore. That's a part of her life that Higgins has basically stolen from her.
But again, that's more to do with the class than the gender stuff that we initially planned to talk about, so we've kind of mingled the concepts anyway.
Yep. Admittedly, to some degree, it was kind of unavoidable.
Yep, it's just kind of an interesting sociological thing, because, like, obviously, the gender divide would kind of play a role in terms of, like, how wealth can be gained and expectations of behavior differing more along gender boundaries than... Oh, you are getting the snot beaten out of you right now.
Yeah, this is an annoying section. We'll just do this. There we go. Anyway. So... There we go. So the next time we see Mrs. Higgins is at the end of the story, when she is covering for Eliza after she's had her tussle with Higgins, her much-deserved fight with Higgins, and has gone to Mrs. Higgins for some reasonable someone reasonable to talk to about this. And Mrs. Higgins makes a point of having Pickering and Higgins wait and have to figure out that this is where Eliza would have gone, which they never do, before she eventually just gives up and tells them.
And then tells them, like, no, I'm not going to send her down until you promise you're going to behave. You've put that poor girl through quite enough, thank you.
To which Higgins, of course, sulks. Pickering is perfectly respectable, as one would expect.
Yep.
Because while he is indeed flawed, and he is indeed responsible for his part in the bet, Pickering makes it quite clear that he has respect for Eliza as a person, where Higgins really only has interest in her as a subject. And we'll get to that more next episode.
Though I'm not sure if I'd call that so much a social thing as it is just Higgins is kind of a mad scientist thing.
I mean, also true. That's not it. I forget which.
Yeah, something else interesting about this is also in that final scene with Mrs. Higgins, who's here once again to offer something resembling moral support to Eliza, who has none otherwise, is Mr. Doolittle comes back up to announce that he is getting married because of the aforementioned the windfall that he received. His latest girlfriend has decided that she actually wants to get married, and well, because there's expectations for women of certain classes. And if, she's going to be with him, who is now wealthy and respectable, to an extent, she better get married.
Yep.
Which startles the heck out of Eliza when she finds out.
Annoying little spiders.
Yep. You're going to let yourself down to marry that low common woman. He ought to, Eliza. Why has she changed her mind? Intimidated, Governor, intimidated. Middle-class morality claims its victims. So, once again, we have that interplay of gender expectations with class. So, we'll obviously get into that more later. Like, you were kind of struggling with this thing, aren't you?
He's really annoying, and he's really hard to do damage until you know exactly when to hit him.
I mean, that's kind of how things tend to go, but...
It's a giant spider boss.
Yeah, is it bugging you?
A little bit. Good thing I have this. I didn't activate it. There we go.
What does that do?
It heals me.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was doing something else too. Like I said, I am not here for the Mega Man lore. I'm just here to kind of riff on books.
Yep, that's fair.
But I am distracted by the pixelated spider. Alright, so... It's just kind of interesting to see how this could work, because, like, well... There's obviously a lot more to be said about the whole, like, gender politics of the time, because, like, this, honestly kind of marks the end of an era, because, I have mentioned the date 1913 several times, which is when I have found this to be, first performed. Most people know that something bad happened about a year later, which kind of made a lot of the stuff in here not really seem super important.
Hint. It was a big war.
The war to end all wars, in fact. And, when that's happening, and everything else is going wrong, being able to speak and behave like the upper crust just doesn't really seem to be quite as crucial. Not getting hit by the spider, however, seems like it should be pretty crucial.
Yeah, he's getting faster. It's annoying.
But yeah, like, it's honestly interesting to see how kind of, like, historical things can play in, because, like, I do know that the suffrage movement was going on during this, and, because that's been a discussion for years in like most countries at this point. It's really just like as like the war starts to break out, it starts to become more of a thing as well. So this fits the era pretty neatly. And well, he keeps coming up with more spiders. And I honestly wonder what kind of impact works like Pygmalion would have had, which is not something I have specifically researched in too much detail. Or, yeah. Looks like you almost got him, though.
Yeah, he's almost dead. Oh, I'm out of ammo, that's why.
Good job.
Let's go with this one.
But this is honestly something I say a lot, is like, knowing historical context and what comes like immediately before and immediately after something is published can really, really change the way people might read a book. Because, well, I had to actually double check when this was written, just because like I always knew it with the whole My Fair Lady stuff. So it was just kind of in that timeless musical era when I first was introduced to it. But knowing more about the turn of the 20th century and everything going on with that and so on and so forth kind of makes a lot more of Eliza's, you know, I want to do something respectable. I want to work in a flower shop. I don't want to just live in the gutter. And working in with Shaw's commentary on his throughout the story about just like gender and proper behavior and such, and who's in the right and who's in the wrong, it just fits more neatly into history with that.
Yep. And we will segue into the further discussion of that in our next and final episode. See you all next time.